pass it off now to Brittany Hutcherson, who will lead us through this discussion. Brittany, go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. We can go to the next slide because since you read the introduction. Okay, so in this session, we'll explore how community-based growing programs reconnect people to food, the role of cultural foodways, intergenerational knowledge, how community gardens create shared spaces for connection and learning, how individual home gardens can still build community resilience, simple ways communities can begin creating garden centered programs. So, the goal out of all of this is not to present a single solution, but explore how growing food can shift how communities relate to food, land, culture, and each other. Next slide. Okay, so my name is Brittany Hutcherson. I am the founder of the Melanin Urban Gardener. I am located in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I am an urban gardener turned urban farmer. I have been gardening for about 10 years, vegetables, but it started as a kid as flowers. And I kind of just said, move my way up to vegetables over time. So I am, like I said, I'm an urban farmer, I'm an educator. I teach programs to youth and elders, and I'm a community advocate when it comes to several things. I'm also a doula as well. So I kind of sit career wise right at the intersection of food access, cultural foodways, and community health because I'm a community health worker as well. Next slide. Okay, so the things that I have through the Melanin Urban Gardener, which is my farming business, I am the creator of a program called Patch to Plate, which is a garden education program that focuses on children. So pretty much I go to daycares, the daycares choose the frequency, and we kind of plan things out from there. A new division of the business is Tracy's Paradise Farms, which is the educational division and also kind of like a memorial to one of the first dogs that I had, Tracy. She was a little Shih Tzu. I put her down about 3 years ago, but she loved the garden when I had her. I have a ton of pictures. Like I said, I am a full spectrum doula. I'm also a master gardener with the state of Wisconsin, and I am a 2025 Feed America Food Leaders Lab graduate. So, through these roles, my work focuses on helping communities reconnect with land, food knowledge, and collective power. Next slide. Okay, so a little bit more about Patch to Play. It's a community centered garden education program. It reconnects people to food through hands on growing experiences. So the kids pretty much when I work with them, we do everything from start to finish. It kind of varies per program though, because some day centers don't have me come in until the summertime. So at that point, I'm bringing plants to them versus us doing everything from seed. So rather than focusing on large scale farming, the work happens in everyday spaces such as daycares, community centers, and neighborhood gardens. So these spaces become places where people can learn practical food skills, explore cultural food traditions, and build relationships through growing food together. Next slide.
Hi, Brittany.
Hi.
This is Maddie, the interpreter. Just a reminder to go more slowly for interpretation.
Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Mhm. So the story and the model. Next slide. So, the sunflower story. So, one of the first things that I do with the children is I ask them, have they ever ate a flower before? And most kids, when they think about it, they'll tell you no. They'll say, I never ate a flower before, right? And so I'll ask them, well, have you ever had sunflower seeds before? And then they'll say yes. And then once they say that they've eaten sunflower seeds before, I tell them, well, technically, you did eat a flower. And little kids, especially between like 4 and 8, when you tell them something like that, they think you're lying. So their instant reaction is like, no. And they start laughing. and then they want to know more. So sunflowers is one of the things that I try to grow with the kids every year. How I starting off with that's kind of like the icebreaker between me and the kids as well. And we end up having a really good, we kind of form a really good bond. But then I also have to tell them that they can't eat every flower that they see. So that's another thing that we end up having to work on throughout the season. Next slide. So the gap in food knowledge. So this is actually a picture of my nephew. He helps me in the garden a lot. So this particular year, I took him to, this was last summer actually, I took him to the strawberry patch to pick strawberries. So he kind of would learn the concept of where they come from. In my space, I had just put strawberries in the space. So I didn't, they weren't growing yet. But this year they're coming back already. So he'll actually get to pick our own strawberries, but we'll probably still go through to the patch. So with urban food challenges, they often focus on grocery access, but it's other issues that exist. A loss of everyday food skills like gardening, cooking from scratch. A lot of kids, if you ask them how to cook stuff, they don't too much know because they're kids. Some of them do know, but just them knowing where their food comes from and point A to point B, there's kind of that lack of knowledge there. Seasonal knowledge, food preservation. These are all skills once lived in our families and neighborhoods everywhere. And it's kind of becoming a lost art form. But through the work that everyone does and the work that I do, we're trying our best to bring it back into our communities and neighborhoods and make it become more how it used to be where everyone knew how to do it. Next slide. Okay, so learning through growing. Gardens create a learning environment that engages multiple senses. The kids, they get to touch the soil, observe plant growth, taste fresh vegetables, and experience the rhythm of the growing season. The crowd favorite in the community garden this past year was chives. Every day that the kids came in, they came about 3 to 4 days a week. The first thing that they would come in and ask, they would say, Miss Brittany, can I go get some chives? And so they would run to the chive bed, and that's what they ate every day when they came in. So I actually need to plant more chives in a community garden because they probably ran that plant pretty ragged. I seen it coming back because I actually just checked it yesterday in the community garden. So these experience that they get, it naturally introduces things about seasonality, nutrition, environmental stewardship, food traditions. And then what makes this approach meaningful is that the learning happens through participation rather than lectures. So everything is very hands on. I have the kids do everything from building the raised beds to moving all the soil into the beds. They literally do everything, no matter the age. And when people plant, harvest, and share food together, knowledge becomes something lived rather than simply taught. Next slide. So, food justice beyond access. So, food justice is not only about getting food, it's about knowledge, land, agency, and culture. Growing food reconnects people to all four. So one of the things that we also struggle with here in Milwaukee with land is whether the land is toxic or not. So in a lot of areas, especially in the communities that I serve, a lot of the land is flagged for lead in the soil. So that's another thing that we have to overcome or work around. And it's to the point where all the inner city schools, especially more so like on the east side, close to downtown, they constantly have to test the kids for lead poisoning, um, because of how much it is and how prominent it is in that particular area. Next slide. Okay, so intergenerational food knowledge. So many elders carry food knowledge that was once common in everyday life. They remember backyard gardens and family farms, saving seeds from season to season, cooking meals directly from what was grown, preserving food through canning and freezing, and growing crops tied to cultural traditions. With the community garden I work with, there is a senior living building across the street, and then there's a senior center about a block away. We do have seniors throughout the season who walk down to the community garden, and they do work with the kids and kind of sit with them and tell them stories and things like that. It's really beautiful to kind of see them all work together in a garden, and they help them the whole time. And the elders always tell the kids like this is what stuff is for and how they can eat it and what they can and can't eat as far as like flowers or wild stuff. So it's a really beautiful thing to see. Next slide. Oh, that's okay. So for younger generations, these skills are often new. So gardens create a space where that knowledge can move across generations again. So children learn how food grows. The elders share their stories and techniques, like I was saying, and then families reconnect traditions tied to land and food. In this way, gardens become places where knowledge, culture, and me- community memory are passed forward. Next slide. Um, let's see here. So, cultural foodways and community gardens. Let me see. Oh, okay. So this photo is actually from the community garden that I work in during the summertime. So the kids were planting collard greens in this particular photo, and we do a lot of companion planting and high intensity spacing. So we grow a little bit of everything in the small spaces that we have. The kids were all working together this day, and they pretty much the kids they plant everything out themselves. So food is more than nutrition. It carries culture, memory, and identity. Across many Black, Indigenous, and communities of color, gardening traditions have always been tied to survival, resilience, and family knowledge passed down through generations. Community gardens become spaces where these traditions can continue. And one of the things that I did with the kids so far this year, I had them start planning out the garden because they live in a community, and I asked them like, what do you want to see in your space, and what is it that you think your community wants in your space, because they live there, so they know best. um Being kids, most almost everybody had watermelon and cantaloupe on their page, which I thought was hilarious. So I got to add a watermelon patch this year, but I did also tell them that we can't just grow fruit. So then they started picking other vegetables like carrots and things like that. Next slide. Okay, so these are some of the example crops that are rooted in many cultural foodways. So for African and African American traditions, collard greens, okra, black eyed peas, mustard greens, and sweet potatoes. I haven't tried sweet potatoes with the kids yet. I do plan on doing that this year. Um, they did the collard greens, they did mustard greens last year. Those were the items that went the fastest in the garden the entire season for us. And then the okra as well. And then a lot in Latino and Caribbean traditions, there's a lot of cilantro, different peppers, tomatillos, beans, calabaza squash. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. For Asian traditions, there is bok choy, Chinese long beans, radishes, Thai basil, and bitter melon. I actually have Asian neighbors within my block, and one of the things that I kind of swap with them is bok choy. They grow it every year. Um, I know how to grow it, but me and cabbage moths and earwigs don't get along. So that's the one thing that I trade with them for. So tomato, I normally kind of give them tomatoes for bok choy and things like that. And then for indigenous food traditions, we have corn, beans, squash, which falls in the Three Sisters method, growing method, which is something I've also done with the kids, sunflowers and wild herbs and native plants. Next slide. Okay, so community building. Next slide. So, urban agriculture reality. So, the common myth is that you need large farmland to grow food. Urban agriculture shows that meaningful food production can happen in small spaces. So, even with our community garden, it's jam packed. It has about like 20, almost 30 beds in there, and we get a lot of food production out of it throughout the season. Even in my space as well, I'm on a quarter acre, is what the house sits on. Probably half of that is my growing space, and I get a couple 100 pounds, if not over 1,000 pounds of food out of my space every year. And a lot of it I do use to feed the elders in my community. I have elderly neighbors, so I kind of feed them first and then do everything else that I need to do with the rest. So cities often contain unused and underused spaces that can support gardens, patios, backyards, community lots, and schoolyards can all become productive growing areas. So here in Milwaukee, we are starting to see a transition with the public school system where they are putting in what they're calling live playgrounds. So versus it just being concrete, they're adding trees back, putting small gardens in there, and things like that. Urban agriculture focuses on maximizing these smaller spaces to produce food locally. So with the community gardens, our community garden is actually on a unused city owned lot. So they let us rent it out, and then we actually have two. So we have the one that we plan on, and then we have one where we have like a healing space, which is a space where the community can kind of come and just sit, because we at one point one summer we had like a really high uptick in violence. So there was an initiative to put healing spaces in some of those unused lots to kind of get people to calm down and come together and try to curb some of the violence. So on our second lot is the healing space, and it's just mainly flowers and things like that. Next slide. So community gardens is gathering spaces. Community gardens do more than produce vegetables. They create shared spaces where people come together around a common purpose. So neighbors who may not otherwise interact begin working side by side. Children explore nature, elders share gardening advice, and families gather around harvest. In this particular picture, this is my space where I grow out of. And also another thing that I get through the community space every year, we have a we get volunteers that are on like mission trips through an organization. So every week we get a different group of people. This particular week, the girls that were in this picture, they were Mennonites, and they came in. They all actually came from farms, so it was really cool having them. They got a lot done that day. And the whole week actually is their norm to be working on the farm and things like that. So they had a lot of nice tricks and stuff for us, and it was nice to talk to them and get their perspective on things. Next slide. So gardens and community belonging. So when people participate in building and maintaining a garden, they develop a sense of ownership over the space. A lot of the kids that participated in the program told me that they would, when their parents would drive past the space, they would let them know that that was the garden that they were working in, and they were happy to tell them. And some of them even said that they would come and get stuff out the garden during the summer months. So this sense of ownership encourages people to care for the land and each other. Community gardens often become informal gathering places where people exchange knowledge, share food, and build friendships. These spaces help foster a sense of belonging within neighborhoods. Next slide. So, community transformation. So, gardens change neighborhoods. Vacant spaces become productive. Neighbors connect. Children interact with nature. And community gardens become community gathering spaces. And we also help, we're able to have nature come in more, with the gardens being there versus it just being a spot that's sitting vacant. Then the pollinators in the area can come back, and the birds and things like that, and it helps creates a better ecosystem for how we live our day-to-day life. Next slide. Okay, so food justice and health. So food access affects maternal health, child development, family well-being. So first,
Oh,
I've seen that firsthand from. Oh, am I echoing?
Sorry, no, I'm gonna try to find
it's coming through, but
if someone
I'm
is
trying to remember. Somebody was just telling me about the Silk Road. Who are you working with?
um let's see
Yeah,
who's
who?
there we go. Okay, got it. Go ahead.
Okay. So firsthand, I've seen how food access has affects maternal health. Being a doula, um, with the mothers that I work with, most of my most of the mothers that I work with, they do come from communities where they need the additional services and help. So I do pair them up with other food pantries, and some of them, if they live by the community garden, I do let them know about the community garden, and they get stuff. If I have extras, I help them out where I can. But I do teach them the importance of food while they're pregnant and what they should eat and kind of stay away from and what helps the baby and things like that. So this picture, the kids, this was their zucchini harvest for the year. We only had about 6 plants in the community garden of zucchini. No, actually only three. We only had three zucchini plants, and this is what they got off of those plants. They were really excited about it. This was about 30 pounds of zucchini. It's hard to tell in a picture but they were pretty big. And sadly, we got squash vine borers immediately after they picked those. So that was their only zucchini round for the season. So food justice is also public health. So if people don't have access to good food, that affects their health, and depending on where they live, that can be detrimental based off of how close a doctor's office and things like that are to them. Next slide. So, community care model. Both gardening and caregiving rely on knowledge sharing, community support, and practical education. So, food growing can be a form of community care. Gardening programs often mirror caregiving practices because they focus on nurturing people and environments. Community support one another through shared work and shared knowledge. So, even with everybody who comes through the community garden, we do have different things throughout the year where we'll have like planting sessions. We do like a community kickoff and a harvest fest at the end of the year. When they come every week, they have different tasks throughout the week. So sometimes it is, okay, how can we help the community as far as put in, hygiene products and things out like that for people who may need it. Next slide. So challenges in this work. Community food programs often face challenges like funding gaps, policy barriers, limited land access, and burnout. Recognizing these challenges helps build more sustainable programs. I would say funding gaps is kind of like one of the bigger things, just in the current climate with a lot of funding being cut. It's kind of hard, especially if you're working with like a nonprofit or for a nonprofit, keeping the funding secure or in our city, a lot of things that we see. So they tell us that they have all this money for us to kind of put into these gardens and stuff, right? But they're all matching grants. So I'm not sure exactly like how the funding is 100% in Chicago and throughout. If you guys have a lot of like matching grants when they offer things for you guys, but like if we're getting anything from the city or the state, it's always matching grants. And in order for so like they'll say up to $4,000, and you're thinking like, okay, I'm gonna get a $4,000 that don't have to pay back, when in reality it's just 1,000 that you don't have to match, and then you have to have the other 3,000 in order to get the funding. So that kind of creates issues because it's like if I had all the money, I wouldn't per se be asking you for it. So that kind of puts a strain on things sometime in the cost of fertilizer and things like that in bigger spaces. And we've also ran into issues here in Milwaukee where a lot of the gardens sit vacant for years. So is somebody over them like the first 2 years, and then after that they kind of like abandon it a little bit, or something happens, then there's nobody there. The garden sits for years, and then now coming in, you have to redo everything. So now the beds are bad, it's overgrown by weeds, and so you have a larger upfront cost because you're trying to get the garden back up and running, and you could potentially cut into your season because you spent all this time trying to get it back together, and then now part of your season's gone, so you may not have enough stuff in time to, or have as much stuff if you would like by the end of the season before we get a killing frost. I know we kind of get cold before you guys here in Illinois. So yeah, we normally get a freeze about like 2 weeks or so before you guys do. So I'm kind of jealous because you guys, even though you're only like an hour and a half away, you guys stay warmer than we do for a little bit longer. Next slide. So what sustains these programs? Successful gardens rely on community ownership, consistent leadership, education, and adaptability. People sustain the gardens, not infrastructure. And the community garden space is somewhat new to me. I kind of had just been like doing things on my own and then branching out to other people or helping other people based off of my space alone. But in the community garden space, have seen that labor is a big issue. I think I seen something in the chat that popped up about labor, but that's one of the things that, yeah, I've noticed labor being a big issue in the community garden space. Having people who are willing to help and being able to consistently help, and who actually have the time to volunteer their time. So next slide. Okay, so individual gardening, how to make an impact in your own yard. Next slide. So growing food at home. So this is how I started out, right? So community transformation does not only happen in large gardens. Individual gardens in backyards, patios, balconies, and containers can also contribute to stronger food systems. So even if it's something as small as if you just have a patio, but your neighbor has a little bit more space and your neighbor can grow squash and tomatoes, but you only have space to grow herbs, and you guys can just kind of swap that way, right? If we go to the store, we think about it, the little pack of herbs that they sell in a little plastic, but that's like between like $3 and $5.
Is the Are the canned tomatoes out yet or not yet?
So that can help between amongst you guys if you kind of swap what the other one isn't growing. When individuals grow food at home, they begin to develop a deeper understanding of how food is processed. Oh no, how food is produced. I can say since transitioning from flowers to food, I am now spoiled. My whole household is spoiled, and we do not buy tomatoes from the store within during the winter months when it's really cold. Once we're through the last tomatoes, that's pretty much it. Sometimes we do buy them from the store still, but they end up going back because they don't taste the same. Um, so this knowledge can inspire conversations with neighbors, friends, and family members, and home gardens often become starting points for broader community interest in growing food. Next slide. So small space growing. Urban growing techniques include square foot gardening, raised beds, container gardening, high intensity planting. These systems work in many urban environments. So me personally, I swear by square foot gardening methods and high intensity planting. I kind of merge the two together to get the most out of my space. This picture is in my own personal space. Um, I switched the space around, but this was when I first started. This was one of the things that I put in. It was 25 pots along here. This is down my driveway. They're kind of like the larger pots that you would get from like Home Depot or Lowe's. They're about $12 now. When I first started buying them, they were $7.99. They're $12 now. I fill them up with soil, and this is where I grow all my herbs. Sometimes I'll put a mini eggplant plant in there and tomatoes in there. But another good thing about it was I was able to teach my nephew how to read. The stripes that you see on there is duct tape, and I wrote all the names of what everything was. So when he was starting to read, he would walk through the garden and start reading the words. And a lot of times he got it right on the first try. If he struggled, I will help him a little bit. But that's another caveat to growing is you can help kids learn along the way. Next slide. So backyard high tunnels. So high tunnels extend the growing season. The benefits include protection from weather, longer harvest seasons, and consistent food production. So this is a picture from inside of my high tunnel. The 2025 season was my first season with the high tunnel. My dad and my uncle and my cousin built it for me in the middle of the winter. Shout outs to them for that. And so I have a 12 4x8 raised beds in there, and the produce vary. I did tomatoes the first year, um, eggplants, and then a lot of peppers in there. I got the tomatoes lived through to the end of November, and then the peppers, because I grow everything from a bell pepper up to a Carolina Reaper. The regular peppers grew, they died first. The Carolina Reapers actually stayed alive in the high tunnel till about the second week in December. It took like the third week of December coldness to wipe them out. And actually now I have peas sprouting in there now, and lettuce, and I have onions poking through in there right now. Because I don't have the vents and stuff in the slides. The sides are closed. Right now, long as the sun is out, it's averaging between 50 and 60 degrees in there. So it's a really cool tool to have. Mine isn't super big. It's 20 feet wide, 32 feet long. Next slide. Okay. So individual growing creates community. So even small personal gardens can create connections between neighbors. People share seedlings, gardening advice, and extra produce. A few tomato plants or herbs in a backyard can lead to conversations about recipes, planting techniques, and seasonal harvests. These small exchanges gradually build networks of shared knowledge and resources, and community resilience often grows from these everyday interactions. So all the more reason why you should grow a garden in your own space if you can. Next slide. So creating a larger impact. So why growing food matters. So growing food reconnects people to the natural cycles of land, water, and the seasons. I probably never paid attention to how soon and when the birds left until I started farming vegetables. Before then, I was just kind of be like, oh, the birds are back. But now I actually pay attention to that and I look for that. Moon cycles as well. It's funny a lot of the things that you pick up the longer that you grow your own food. It encourages healthier relationships with food and increases awareness of where food comes from. Most importantly, it helps communities rediscover their ability to care for themselves and each other, which is really big because communities are better when we stand together, right? So long as everybody's divided, it can cause friction. But if we can all come together over something like growing our own food and being able to share things with each other, that helps a lot. Gardens remind people that food systems are not distant structures controlled only by institutions. Um, with everything that's going on in like data centers and stuff going up, we are seeing a lot of bigger farms go away. But us growing food amongst ourselves and in our smaller spaces, that kind of helps replenish it some. We and it also gives us our own control because most people when they think about farming, they just instantly think about big agriculture. One of the things that kind of shocked me when I first started farming and working with the USDA and things like that was when I found out that the food that we eat like tomatoes and things like that, are considered specialty crops to them, and that main crops to them are corn, soy, and wheat, which is things that we export, which I still haven't completely wrapped my head around that. But yeah, that was one of the first things that I learned that kind of really shocked me. It kind of changed my perspective on things even more. So there are systems that community can actively participate in, in shaping, so we can control how our food is grown if we and what is grown with if we do it ourselves. Next slide. So small actions that you can take that are long-term impact. So community food systems rarely change overnight. This is not a quick process. So I know a lot of people, they get discouraged when they start because they're like, I'm going to start a garden. I'm going to start this. I'm going to start that. Full steam ahead, right? And those are like the quickest way for burnout and to get discouraged. Um, Growing food and fostering community is kind of one of those things that I've learned is very much slow and steady wins the race. So the tortoise and the hare story makes more and more sense the more that I am in this industry. So you can grow food through consistent and small actions, a few raised beds at a daycare, a garden club at a senior center, a family growing their own herbs on their patio. Over time, these small efforts build stronger food knowledge, healthier communities, and deeper connections to land. Next slide. So reclaiming the roots. So the theme of this summit highlights reclaiming land, knowledge, and cultural traditions. Gardens offer one pathway for communities to reconnect with these roots. By growing food together, communities reclaim not only access to fresh produce, but also the cultural knowledge and collective power that comes with it. Next slide. So, closing thoughts. Food justice does not begin with large institutions or policy. It often begins with simple acts of growing food. When communities plant seeds together, they create opportunities for learning, connection, and resilience. Every garden becomes a reminder that communities can shape their own food futures. Next slide. Okay, so some questions to think about and things that we can discuss shortly. So, where in your community could a small garden or food growing space exist that doesn't exist today? Who in my community already carries food knowledge that could be shared with others? What cultural food traditions exist in my community that could be honored through gardening or food education? What is one small step I could take to help in my community reconnect with growing or preparing food? How could growing food help strengthen relationships and resilience in my community? And then next slide. Okay, connect with me. This is this is all my contact information. That is my nephew right there. Who helps me in the garden this year. I hired him as my garden assistant. So that's him. He's 7. So yeah. So I guess we can go in the chat for questions, or if you want to go back to the slide with the questions so people can kind of answer that, we could do that.
Yeah, and I'll make sure to show your contact information again at the end.
Hmm.
But yeah, let's maybe have like yeah, people can reflect on these questions. I think that would be great. Um, I would say yeah, let's start with questions in the chat, which I'll keep an eye out for. But if it's a little bit more involved, I mean, we can bring people off mute and have a little conversation here. But I'll go
Okay.
ahead and read questions out of the chat if that's helpful.
Yeah,
Um,
we could do that. I was scrolling. That's what I was looking at.
yep, I've got it. Yeah, so the first question that I'm seeing in the chat is from Yvonne, which is what do you pay for rent for the lots and you pay it to the city?
So it's about, so actually, I believe it's like a one time, like $75 fee, depending. I know they changed some of it recently, but before it used to just be either $75 or $125 fee. And then that's that's it. The only thing that you pay for after that is water fire hydrant access every year. So for them to, in a space that I'm at, for them to hook up the whole spigot where we can just like screw the hose to the fire hydrant, because we have one with taxes and, well, no, not taxes, but for everything to use it for the season, that's about $130. But outside of that, in general in Milwaukee, once they flag the space as like a community garden, you kind of just pay that one time fee, whoever starts it. And then after that, the only fee that you have associated with it is water access if the rain barrels aren't enough. A lot of the sites, they do have those really big, like couple 100 gallon things with from for runoff rainwater, because they build like a little pergola and they attach those to it. Um, so yeah, if that's not enough water, it's about the $130 for the hydrant a year. But outside of that, the only cost you really incur is like fixing things on the garden. Or if the city feels like you let the grass get overgrown or something like that and they ride past and then they send their people to cut the grass, they'll send you the bill for that.
Yeah. Another question here is, how do you adjust your program from a 9 month growing season to a short summer program to keep the children engaged?
So how I adjust it is I kind of, so since they start in June, I try to catch them in the earlier parts of the season. So like our schools here, you know how they give like the kids the calendar on when they'll be out of school. So in introductory like activities, I try to do with them on like spring breaks or days where they'll be off for like 2 or 3 days in a row. So we'll kind of start there. But since like with me, when I start everything from seed. I basically just grow extra, so that way when they start in June, we plant the stuff that they can still put in the ground, but they'll see a harvest by the time they go to school. But the stuff that takes a little bit longer, I'll put in like ahead of time for them. Just so they can kind of get the full effect. But another thing that we do is in October, because they have like a couple days out in October, that's when we do like a harvest fest. So the garden's kind of like on its last leg at that point, but it's still producing pretty good. So they get to kind of see, they get to come back, and then we do a cleanup day, and they do like a mass picking of everything, and then they can take stuff home. Because when they come once a week for 2 hours, but it's a total, last year was a total of 4 groups. So everything, they were pretty much able to stay on top of everything. So that's how I was able to condense it in like that short time, like 9 months within that, like that short time. Um, just off of that, adjusting it because it's so many. It was about 75 kids a week. Is was how many kids I was working with. It was about 75 a week. That was like, yeah, that was the average number a week, 75. Sometimes it was like 100, depending on if more kids came. But yeah, it was about 75 kids every week. So that's how we were able to condense it because of how many kids it was. If that answer your question.
Sounds like that was, yeah, that was pretty great. A question from Eleanor here. How do you get the intergenerational work started?
So I went to the centers. So um in a lot of cities there is a program called Servant Older Adults. SOA is the acronym. Servant Older Adults. They're nationwide. That's a good way to start if you want to see who have what centers around you have that particular program, because if they have an SOA program, those programs, part of the requirements is they have to have like activities for the seniors. And like I looked at one of their calendars and it's like crazy. It's literally like 5 days a week, like activities back to back. It's amazing. It's almost equivalent to like having like 5 kids that play soccer and they all have practice on the same day. Like that's how hectic it is. So if you can get with one of the SOA groups and talk to somebody there, they'll be able to kind of like squeeze you into the schedule. Or if you have a community center near you, even if they don't have the Serving Older Adults program, you can always just talk to them. So like the apartment complex, I just went and talked to the people who work at the apartment complex. I made like a cute little flyer in Canva that I felt like would appeal to them. I put my phone number down so they could call. I put call or text. I didn't want to do a QR code because I know some seniors are up with technology, but I know a lot of them struggle with it. So even though text message is my preferred method of communication, I put my phone number down there so they can call me. And so they started calling, asking questions, and then that's how we kind of got them in there. A lot of times when they came, they kind of just came because they wanted to get out the house, which is fine with me. So yeah, it's kind of just going and being finding where your seniors hang out at and getting them to like come to your space. Um, the seniors like to hang out at the McDonald's early in the morning here too. I don't know if that's a thing where you are, but catch them one early morning at a McDonald's around like 6, 7 o'clock and see who you can get.
I love that because that it's like the two ends of the spectrum of food like of good food or whatever. Um One other a question from Yvonne was, do you suggest that people take up the Master Gardener certification for community garden operations?
um, I I feel like you don't have to. For me personally, it was something that I did because I had been like thinking about it. It's good in a sense of kind of like phoning a friend. Every state it varies. So like in Wisconsin for the Master Garden program, we have to have so many hours of like community based work. But the only thing is the state decides what the community work is that we do. So like the work that I do in the community garden, none of it counts. None of it counts. So it's kind of like you have it's weird. So I would say look into how your Master Gardener program works to see if it makes sense. Because if the program is like Wisconsin, where they tell you what works is ours and what doesn't, and it's the opposite of what you're trying to do in your community, then I would say no. And then too, a lot of times going into the Master Gardener program, um, when you get to like the insects and pests and things like that, it can be kind of complicated. So I feel like you don't per se need it. That's just my opinion. You don't per se need it to like run a community garden.
All right. Um, yeah, if anybody else has other questions in the chat, that would be great. But we're closing in on what would be an appropriate time to wrap up, so we can go ahead and do that. I do have a poll here, so I'm gonna go ahead and launch our feedback poll. I'm going to ask everybody to fill this out. If people have, we can leave the conversation open for a minute here while people fill that out. Also, if other folks have any other questions, um, we're here for that. And yeah, if anybody has any reflections on the questions that are currently on the screen, I think that would be wonderful to have in the chat. Um, if you have any of those. But meanwhile, also just like thank you, Brittany, so much. I'm actually gonna go ahead and go to this slide with your contact information, to make sure that people reach out to you. Um, yeah, as folks are thinking of heading out, just drop any notes or emojis in the Zoom chat here. Share how you're feeling.
Yeah, and then thank you guys. I'm kind of like flipping through the chat.
Okay, Eleanor, glad to hear that you'll be presenting next. That's exciting. Um, and yeah, I want to take a moment to also thank all of you for coming. Really appreciate that. And thank you so much to the interpreters and captioner who were able to make this session accessible to everybody. And for, everybody's work that you're doing to make this happen. It's great. I mean, I know personally for me, I've had a community garden plot for a couple of years, but this actually, I'm way more inspired to like hang out there after this conversation, which I really appreciate.
Oh,
That's
thank
something
you.
like I'm always just like showing up there at like sunset to like scramble a couple things together. But what if I went there during the daytime? What if I made it a real priority? So,
Yeah.
it looks like Kathleen in the chat dropped a few options for upcoming sessions. Highly recommend that you join us for those sessions that are starting at 11:45. Includes how a West Side community builds resilience through food access, community dialogue on accessing food systems funding. We've got fighting for our farms, grassroots advocacy in a tumultuous year, and decolonizing your diet, reclaiming roots and transforming our plate. Um, am I seeing a couple of people that are having issues with submitting their poll? Interesting. It looks like some of the questions are
I'm
required.
sorry. I missed a question, so that's why
Oh,
it didn't submit.
okay, yeah, I think it's like listed, it lists them, most of them as like required with the little asterisk, so you just have to hit that. And it's all helpful for us to just get that feedback on the on how the sessions are going. So yeah, appreciate that very much. Leah says, would love to connect to any gardeners on the southwest and southwest side of Chicago. People's Panther Party just launched their free food program. And in the spirit of community, they want to partner with and uplift other community organizations. Uh, that's exciting.
I have family on the south side of Chicago. I can ask and see what they say.
And it looks like an Omera, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, has a few acres of land in Montino. Welcome to set up an event anytime for free. That's amazing. Thank you so much for that offering.
Oh, no worries. I'll put my email on the chat, my
Okay.
personal.
That's great. And I also, if you are signed up with the Summit WebEx platform, um, like the phone app and the platform that you're using, I would actually encourage you to post in the main there's a main like wall that is shared with everybody at the summit. And that's actually a great place to post that sort of thing as well, if you would like to do that. And it looks like Haley just dropped in the link to Master Gardening education programs as well, which is great. We're getting the resources in these right here in the chat, which is what we're here to do. So thank you so much for all that, everyone.
Yeah, I seen in one of the replies you guys have like a master a urban farmer like certification. I'm gonna have to look into that. That looks pretty cool. Yeah, it has a master urban farmer. Haley had put that in the chat. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. I'm gonna have to look into that. Where's my post-it note?
Yep. I immediately was like trying to offer you one of the ones that I have here, but that doesn't work like that, unfortunately.
Yeah, I actually should probably log into the system and see what's up for volunteer stuff soon, so I can try to get that out the way. Because Wisconsin, it's a minimum of like it's a minimum of 10 hours. But then like if you do like 1,000 hours within like a certain time span, you're like automatically a master gardener for life. And once you
Hmm,
hit those 1,000 hours, you never have to do any other volunteer hours ever again.
interesting.
Okay, People's Pantry. Write that down too.
I'm also going to write that down. I'm excited that that's active.
Yeah, I look into that. Cause yeah, I'm back and forth. I'm back and forth between Milwaukee and Chicago, honestly. So it would be a good thing to look into.
Wonderful. Well, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll, and I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up the call here, unless anybody else has any other questions or comments here. Um, Oop, I hit the share results button. You don't need to. That's kind of for us mostly. So, all right. Yeah. So again, thank you everyone for being here. Thank you so much, Brittany, for sharing your wonderful experience. I think that that was a really like rich and inspiring is maybe an overused word, but I genuinely like it's propelling me to act different at my with my garden. So I really appreciate that. And
Oh, thank you.
yeah, and many thanks to our interpreters and captioners as well. And we will see you all at the next session.
All right.
All right, have a good day.
You too.